Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. Joining us, as always, the Prince of Twitter, the Regent of RedState.com, the Poobah of the holiday season, Andrew Malcolm.
Poobah of podcasts, yeah.
The Poobah of podcasting, the Poobah of podcasting. Well, there you go. See, that's even better. Andrew Malcolm, of course, at AHMalcolm on Twitter. He's not on Blue Sky. Don't look for him there. Actually, I should ask you, are you on Blue Sky?
No, I'm not anywhere but Twitter and with you, Ed.
I am only on Twitter. I am on Truth Social. I'm not going to go to Blue Sky. I mean, it looks like a train wreck over there. I am on Truth Social, and I posted my first truth earlier today, Andrew.
Wow, this is a big day for you.
It's a big day. I just want people to know this. Now, you're the cause of this.
Uh-oh.
I want you to know that you were the cause of this. Now, so you sent me an email, I think it was yesterday, had to be yesterday, informing me that I was no longer under consideration for ambassador to Ireland.
That's right. That's right, Ed. You're out of the running.
I'm out of the running.
You were not loyal enough.
Apparently not. Who knew? Actually, I knew. So I went over to Truth Social. I didn't actually do anything with it, but I was looking for something else at the time, and I saw Donald Trump's, post on this, and so I reposted it with a comment and said something to the effect of, "Well, I'm still available for the Vatican," and
good for you.
I don't think anybody follows me on Truth Social, and I kind of don't blame them because literally I've been on there for 2 years, and this is the first time I think I've actually ever posted. I think this is the first time I've actually ever posted. Now I got to check. I'll take a look at this. How many messages have I received? A grand total of 0. Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So yes, I am not going to be the ambassador to the Vatican either.
Do they do the hashtag there?
They do hashtags and stuff there. Yeah, it's Blue Sky does that too. It's basically a copy of Twitter, right? And that's fine. I have no problem with a plethora of these things. And if all the liberals want to go over to Blue Sky and commune over there, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could do both at the same time. What I find amusing, though, is how many of them have left Twitter in a huff, including one fellow named George Stephanopoulos. Apparently, he did this a month ago, but I suspect it had something to do with the fact that ABC News and Disney decided to throw in the towel on Trump's defamation lawsuit and pay Trump $15 million and post a message of regret and give his lawyers an additional $1 million to cover their costs. And Andrew, I don't know about you, but to me, that certainly looks like saying, yeah, we were guilty. Yeah, we lied.
It does. But what it really does, I think, is it indicates, because they were going to do discovery this week.
Yeah, they're going to go to the depositions. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we were going to find out what they'd all been saying behind the scenes about Trump. And, I'll fake say that he's a rapist, blah, blah, blah. It's just, they were, who was it? Oh, it was Eric Erickson. He said, I've been a lawyer and I've defended newspapers and television stations. He said, and this was not, this was about discovery. It was about hiding from discovery.
Yeah. And look, I mean, this is, even if it was about discovery, it's still about the fact that they lied on air, because there's no way that they would pay him $15 million plus add a note of regret. They didn't say apology, regret for George Stephanopoulos' comments. And this isn't just one offhand comment. He kept saying it over and over and over again during this interview with Nancy Mace, right? In March, in this March thing. So yes, they were going to go to the depositions. CNN's is in a different lawsuit with a different, a different plaintiff somebody who's not actually a public figure, over their report on his company's attempts to exfiltrate Americans out of Afghanistan. And they are in the process of discovery, and apparently it's not going well for CNN. But, the New York Times today had an analysis, right? It wasn't opinion per se. It was an analysis. It was in their news section that said that, the Trump administration, the incoming Trump thing is going to try to basically bully the press out of critical coverage. Critical coverage, that was the term that they used, through the use of defamation and libel lawsuits. And my point on this was, it's the media that actually has all the advantages on these lawsuits, especially because of the Sullivan Doctrine. But it's the media
very hard, very hard. I mean, there must have, for Trump to win defamation, that's a huge thing. That's not a oh, okay, we misstepped.
If it was just an issue of, they said, well, we'll retract it and apologize, and that was it, you could say, look, ABC and Disney just decided that they didn't want to fight this, but it doesn't mean that they're not, that they thought that this was not correct. Paying $16 million, paying $16 million, writing a $16 million check is a whole other thing here. And I can assure you that Disney isn't writing $16 million checks just because they're intimidated into avoiding critical coverage.
They knew they were had. Yeah.
Yeah. Their attorneys had to have come back and said, it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run than 15 million. You should take this deal. Because, people reach settlements all the time, right? I mean, people reach settlements and agree to pay, and it's usually some, I'll give you an example. I had an employee that we had to fire once, and this is years ago, so maybe 20 years ago, right? Well, it had to be more than 20 years ago. I had to fire this guy, and he was really obnoxious. I mean, I had all sorts of good cause. I had everything documented in the file, and he challenged it, right? And he filed a complaint, I think, or a notice of an intent to challenge us on it. And the attorney told my boss, we're just going to pay this guy $5,000, right? To make it go away. And I was like, yeah, I totally get that. It's going to waste a hell of a lot more than that in just dealing with the complaint, right? And my boss was furious. He wanted to fight that. He didn't care if it was going to cost him $50,000. He didn't care if it was going to cost him $100,000. He was really angry about this one particular employee, and he wanted to fight it. He didn't want to give the guy the satisfaction. And we all had to sit down and say, Nick, it's not worth it, man. $5,000. It's off your table. And he's like, I know. He was a little tight with money, as a good CFO should be, but he was willing to spend whatever it was to go after this guy. So this is no $5,000 check and apology. This is $16 million, and that means something to Disney. And
that's a chunk of change. Yeah.
Oh. So you were at the New York Times.
Yes.
If you had cost the New York Times $16 million, or even what 16 million would have been, you were there, what, I think
26 years.
26 years, I think, in the late 1980s, right?
I was there from 67 to 93.
93. Okay, so 93. Whatever $16 million in today's numbers would have been still probably $8, $9, $10 million, right? In 93. If you had cost the New York Times $9 million because you wrote something that turned out to be knowingly false, do you think the New York Times would keep you on staff?
I doubt it.
That era.
But they have we don't want to get into all the details. I guess we did it before, but they promoted people trying to catch up on DEI that shouldn't have had promotion, and they ended up with Jason Blair and some other stuff. I did not realize he wrote over 600 stories for the New York Times. And he was, a rising star, and sent him out on the national thing. And they investigated, and were like a third of them had made up stuff. And he never left Brooklyn, but wrote stories about interviewing that female soldier who got rescued by the special forces.
Oh yeah,
How
yeah,
do,
yeah.
how do you do that? I mean, how does it cross your mind that you're going to write an interview of a famous person and not get caught? How, and Janet Cook on the Washington Post, she did that touching opus on the poor black kid in the inner city and got a Pulitzer, and he didn't exist. You know, I can't imagine doing that, but imagine thinking you're going to get away with that uh, with a famous person, not uh, an anonymous person somewhere in the city. It's just, oh,
Well, it brings me back to the Stephen Glass thing. And I think we've talked about this.
yeah,
You ever watch the movie Shattered Glass? Did you ever? No.
no, no.
Really should watch it. It's very good. By the way, one of the heroes of that story, who was the New Republic editor at the time, Chuck Lane, who had been at the Washington Post as deputy opinion section editor for several years now, is moving over to the Free Press. They just announced that last week.
Ah,
And I like Chuck Lane. He had a great book called Freedom's Detective. It's really a gripping read about the beginnings of the Secret Service. And I got a chance to interview him. I never did talk to him about the New Republic stuff because we were talking about his book. But I would love to sit down and pick his brain about that off the record sometime, just to hear what he has to say about that, or if he even really still wants to talk about it.
yeah.
But that New Republic thing, Stephen Glass was really just making stuff up. And the reason why they never caught him at it, there's a couple of reasons. One is he figured out how to game their fact checking thing. Is that if you wrote personal notes, they considered you reliable, and your personal handwritten notes were considered to be part of the fact checking thing. And he did actually go after some notable people, including I can't think of the guy's name now. It's at the American Conservative Union, who was running CPAC for years and years and years. This guy ran CPAC for years and years. This is before Matt Schlapp did it. And he did Spring Breakdown was the name of the piece, where he's saying that the young guys at CPAC were molesting women in the hallways and
Oh, yeah.
Tanking up on liquor, which is probably not all that far off. I've been to CPACs, and doing all sorts of different abusive stuff, and is David something or other. And he actually called to complain and said, the Omni Shoreham doesn't have refrigerators in the rooms, which was one of the features in this thing. And in the movie, it shows this. And they find out that they don't have them in there, but you can rent them. And so Stephen Glass says, well, they must have rented it. And so the magazine stands by the story. He wrote 41 stories, and at least 27 of them were cooked. And the reason why he got away with it was he knew how to game the system, and he was making up things about the people that they didn't like.
Yeah.
That was it. They didn't want to check it.
Well, then it came out last week? Didn't the woman who said she got raped by the Duke lacrosse team said that it was all made up?
Yeah, well, we kind of knew that, right? But I mean, she had never.
Well, this was suspected. But did you read after it? I saw a piece on Twitter that the guy who came out to defend him was Stephen Miller.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was going to be deputy chief of staff for Trump now.
That's interesting. No, I didn't know that. That's an interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, we have important news, Ed.
Oh,
don't we? I don't know. The German government. I don't know.
Oh, the German government is Olaf Scholz, I guess, or Schultz is out. Lost a
vote of confidence.
Vote of confidence. It looks like Justin Trudeau might be on the way out in Canada for similar reasons. And it's interesting because all of these are sort of the progressive establishment international, Western,
Global people.
yeah, the globalist people, then they seem to be not doing well these days, politically speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just in the U.S. I mean, is that what you're seeing too? I mean, are you
Yeah.
seeing it?
Yeah. I agree. My father, who was Canadian for a long time, um, he told me, he said, "You watch." He said, "Canada keeps prime ministers past their time because, of course, they can. There's no term limits there." He said, "Americans, they get a president, they either throw them away or they keep them, and then they're done with them after 2 terms." And he thought that was good. And if you watch it, when they stay as long as Trudeau has, they end up getting in trouble.
Yeah, I think we see a little bit of that in American politics too, which is that the second
Well,
terms
in
of
the
president,
Congress, yes. I'm
well,
talking
I mean,
about
in
president.
Congress certainly too, but I mean, even presidents, second terms of presidents are usually not terribly successful.
Yeah, yeah,
It's when the scandals
absolutely.
start thing. It's when the focus gets lost a little bit, and
And they don't have an election hanging over them. And I'm hoping that Trump is an exception to the rule, because he's not going to have another term. So I hope he doesn't run wild.
you know, I think the difference here is, and I mean, we're not going to know until we're into it, right? But I think that it might be different because all of those problems that would normally occur, scandal problems and stuff like that would normally occur in a second term of a president were part of his first term as
Yeah,
president.
yeah,
And I think that
yeah.
this
That's
last
a flip. That's a flip. Yeah,
yeah, I think this last election gives him more um of a mandate. I mean, I know mandates are kind of, I'm not sure I'm convinced that there's any such thing as a mandate, but there's at least more there's more substance to the idea that voters really did want a change in direction back to
yeah,
Trump. And
absolutely.
it wasn't just a fluke, and it wasn't just some sort of oddball thing.
Or at
Russia.
least at least a change of direction.
Yeah.
And Trump was the only realistic alternative.
Well, and Trump was the alternative that they really wanted, right? I mean, I think I think that, and
They
this gets
certainly
back
came to yeah, they certainly came to Trump with more um, enthusiasm this time. Yeah,
more enthusiasm. I mean, he won the popular vote, which he is the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. Um, and I mean, that's saying something. Um, so yeah, I'm hopeful, I guess, that we're going to avoid some of that nonsense in this term. But I think at least for 2 years, the second 2 years of this term,
yeah,
you may get that lame duck, lost focus thing, especially if Democrats bounce back and take the House and or the Senate in 2026. Then you're going to run into the buzzsaws, where you've got impeachment, investigations, that sort of thing.
I'm hoping that there's no how to put this, that there's no upset of the usual routine in a second term.
Yeah.
He finishes his second term, and we don't go through a vice president and all that stuff. It's just, but everything, everything in the last several years, nothing has gone as expected.
Oh,
Oh, oh
no,
my God.
expected. It's been crazy.
Oh,
Now, what did go as expected, to me anyway, was that Trump won Person of the Year from.
oh yes. Oh, Segway City. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he did. And it's a big deal for a few days. And
And that's it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, Time Magazine started this in 1927. Time Magazine started in 23, and in 27 they started with Man of the Year. And you know why? Because business was so slow around the holidays. They said, well, let's get something that's different. And so they did Man of the Year because they had overlooked Charles Lindbergh when he actually flew the ocean. So they made him Man of the Year in January for the previous year. And then it became a good sales pitch, like the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue,
Sure.
which they've now, which was in January, traditionally. When they started that, I think in '64, and because January was such a slow sports month. But then came the Super Bowl, and so that they've moved it. The new owners, they're new owners for Time and Sports Illustrated and everything. They moved it, the swimsuit, to May, which I guess lets them advertise swimsuits for the summer. I don't know. Anyway, Anyway, Man of the Year, the owner of the of Time magazine now. It's not written like it used to be. It used to be really fun. And news magazines, there was no such thing in 1923 as a news magazine that wrapped up the news, didn't have to deal with all the dirty details, could really put you at the scene. I mean, it was fun to read. But the new owner is a Trump fan, and so I think he offered a Man of the Year, and he got a special interview, and I put the link in the column on Sunday, and looked at the idea of Man of the Year and how Trump is so good at manipulating the media, sometimes too good for his own good.
Well, look, I mean, I think that Person of the Year is usually not terribly notable. I'm not even sure I'd put a lot of importance on this one, except for the fact that that they didn't want to give it to Trump. And there was really only one other realistic option. So, Andrew, you're a media professional. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the editors who had to make this decision, and knowing Time Magazine's politics and all that. Imagine being the editors that had to weigh: do we give this to Donald Trump or do we give this to Benjamin Netanyahu? Because those are really the only two guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the decision, Trump or Netanyahu, was easily made by the owner, Trump, and Trump. It's Trump or you're out of work. So in that sense, it was easy. But you can make a strong argument that he was the important newsmaker of the year. I think in terms of lasting things that he accomplished, it's probably Netanyahu for this past year. We'll see what happens.
Right.
Certainly changing American politics and oh my gosh, changing the Republican Party. That's Trump.
Well, look, I mean, and again, Time Magazine is an American-based, and somewhat American-centric magazine, no matter what they might want to say. They're mainly in their market is mainly in America, so they're going to focus on things that happen in the U.S. and how it impacts the U.S. That's fine. It's what it should do. And it's kind of traditional anyway that the winning presidential candidate usually kind of gets the nod, or at least is up there on this. And I was reading the thing that the apparently Kamala Harris was on the show. The other people on the short list were Kamala Harris, Netanyahu was on it, Kate Middleton for some reason, and Elon Musk. And look, I mean, I think you could have said Elon Musk, except that most of what Elon Musk is making news about these days is because he's supporting Donald Trump, which sort of, is a cart leading the horse a little bit. If you,
no, good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Kate Middleton, really, nobody else. I have nothing but respect for Kate Middleton. I'm glad that she survived her cancer treatment. I think she's a lovely woman who is executing the job that she has as a member of Royalty Incorporated as best as she can possibly do it. She's doing it with charm and grace, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, the Princess of Wales is the Person of the Year. I think
that wouldn't. That's a space filler.
That's a space filler. Anyway, we got to get to your columns here, and You did write about the Man of the Year, Person of the Year title over at Trump. But the other thing I want to talk about, I think that this is where I think that the Trump impact is going to be, is that Donald Trump is assembling a team to wipe out woke. And this is
Yeah,
your
I hope so. Yeah. To me, that's job one. It's a cancer, and you alluded earlier to the globalists kind of having trouble. I hope so, and I hope woke has serious trouble, but it's so deeply embedded in institutions that I hope it uh, suffers greatly. I I have a friend, and I won't mention his name or what school he's at, but he's a conservative at a major university, and he said after the election, for weeks he's just so enjoyed walking around campus and seeing all the disturbed professors. They say, "Oh, how can you be happy on such a day?" He says, "Well, it's a beautiful sunny day." He said, "No, after the election." You go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, well," and then you feel like, "Oh, this is fun," because it's gone the other way sometimes.
yeah, I have learned not to I have
No,
learned not to bait my my more liberal friends and family members about that type of thing,
yeah.
just because.
No, that's the smart thing. Unless you're at Thanksgiving and you want to save money on Christmas gifts, then it's a smart move. Wear your MAGA hat to Thanksgiving dinner.
Absolutely. Little put those little MAGA, drumstick caps on there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Serving turkey. Bring the turkey out, the red. Wow,
Oh
you're
boy.
you're a tough dude, man.
Oh no. It's easy to talk when you're alone in the room. Uh, uh,
So I'm impressed so far with the cabinet, with a couple of exceptions. I mean,
yeah.
because nobody gets everything right the first time out. Of course, Gates is gone. I really like Pam Bondi, and she should have been the first choice for that for AG. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is there to be a disruptor. I get that. RFK at HHS, I get that too, although I don't like it for a couple of different reasons. But I think, Hegseth at DOD, Christy Noem at Homeland Security. I think those are the two. And then, oh, who was it at Education? I forget who he picked
Oh
for
yeah. The agriculture. Yeah.
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 Uh,
Oh, McMahon.
McMahon. Yeah. Linda McMahon. Those are people who, I mean, those are the three departments where you really have to get rid of the woke stuff, right? And then Marco Rubio at State to deal with the censorship stuff that was coming out of the State Department, right? Um, I'm happy about that. I think it's good to have disruptors. I think it's good that Donald Trump is winning these um, lawsuits against media organizations that lie about him. I think that's good too. I think a lot of things need to be shaken up.
Yeah.
And so um,
Yeah. And so going in, you can fret about, oh, what might happen. And I've been fretting for years, and so I'm letting it go. I'm not excited about a few of those people, but I'm more of a spectator. I'm not going to waste any more stomach acid on things that I can't control. That's what I'm saying, Ed, and I'm sticking to it.
well, you've had a lot of experience at that being a Browns fan. So,
That's true. That's true, Ed. That's very true. How the Steelers do?
oh yeah, I know. They
Yeah,
lost.
yeah, yeah. No, it's and oh, I don't want to. I don't want to get into it. I started watching, and this weekend was awful. It was the Steelers and the Chiefs. I mean, the Browns and the Chiefs, and I've become a fan of the Chiefs because it's so pointless to be a Browns fan for a while. Uh, and I just, well, it's true. I like watching quarterbacks who are just superb. Drew
Yeah,
Brees, Joe Montana. And Patrick Mahomes, I just enjoy watching it. I played football in high school, so I appreciate some of it, not all the subtleties. Oh my gosh. And the link, the mental link between Mahomes and Kelsey. He knows if the play breaks down, Mahomes knows where Kelsey's going before Kelsey knows where he's going. And it's just the to me, that's the fun of sports is the anticipation, the quick reaction. And and they seem like nice people. So in that sense, I can cheer for them. But it was the Browns and the Chiefs, and I started to watch the game on tape, and then I said, nah, it just
Well,
it's
well,
like,
you know, I mean, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they find ways to win, even when it looks like they're going to lose.
yeah, well,
They find ways.
they didn't have any trouble. And
No,
I started to watch the Army Navy game, and then Army wasn't doing well and didn't do well. It's like, oh, come on.
and they
So
had a
we'll
good
see.
they had a good squad this year too. They were ranked.
Oh, amazing. Well, and then they go on and their bowl opponent pulls out. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. Why is there ball?
Marshall said, no, we decided we're not going to bowl game. Too many of our guys have gone into the transfer portal. So they had to find somebody else with a losing record to play in the bowl game. So yeah, well, the big thing will be this coming weekend with the playoffs starting in the college.
Playoffs are starting. Yeah, I think Notre Dame goes up against Illinois. Is that right? I
Is
think.
that
I
right? Was it?
think it's
Yeah,
Illinois.
I don't know.
Um,
Anyway, it's Ohio State and Tennessee, which is tough because I'm in Tennessee and I grew up. My dad showing me Ohio State in a tiny little black and white Dumont television screen. He said, "Okay, now watch this guy. He'll tell you where the play's going." So I watched the guard and he pulls out and goes that way. And I watched him, and sure enough, the ball goes in. I said, oh, I can see into the future by watching certain players that don't have the ball. So
awesome.
I grew up with Ohio State and Hopalong Cassidy and Woody Hayes and all that crowd. So I have to go with the Buckeyes. And
I guess you got to go with Buckeyes, and you and Hugh Hewitt are both
yeah,
Patriots
yeah,
fans and Browns fans. So there you go.
yeah.
Uh,
And he's going to afternoon now.
he is going to afternoon. It's actually, you know, Seb Gorka got moved up. Well, Seb Gorka went to work for the White House again, so he's no longer going to be on the air. And I think that starts in January. I think he's still on the air now. So Hugh made the play for afternoons because he's tired of getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
This coast. Um, and so Dwayne's very happy about this. I'm very happy about this because I occasionally, guest host for Hugh. I will be actually doing
Dwayne is the producer, right?
Dwayne's
So
producer.
he's got to get up, and he's in California. Well, that's the price you pay for being in California. You get nice weather, you got to get up early. That's what. When I went, I was transferred in the '70s to the San Francisco bureau of the New York Times. And of course, New York Times in those days was operating on, well, it still does, I guess, on Eastern time, but it didn't have a national edition. And so the bureau chief was a wonderful man, Wallace Turner. So he said, okay, so here's what it's like here. You say, I'm going to get up early. I get up at 7 in the morning and you're late.
You're already late.
You're already late. And when I was in Canada, I was the bureau chief in Toronto for the Times, and I'd go to Calgary, and I'd wake up early, like 6:30 or 7, and I'd open the curtains, and all the buildings, all the skyscrapers, the lights are going on, the oil business is going. It's not even light daylight yet, and there's still, of course, that's far north, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, that time change thing. So I don't I live now just a few miles from the time zone marker from the Eastern time. So if you're going to go east of where I live, yeah, if you're talking with somebody there, you have to say, well, you go on fast time or slow time. So if it's Eastern time or Central time. And here's a fun thing. I once wrote for the Times a story about uh, daylight time and how it affected dairy farmers. Now, you wouldn't think, I mean, you think, well, who cares? But as the dairy farmer said to me, he said, well, if you're a cow and your udder is full, an hour makes quite a difference. Yeah. So he would change the milking time 15 minutes a week for a month because you couldn't tell the cows, okay, wait an hour. No, no,
I'm
no.
not going to go for that.
No, they're not going to go for that. So anyway, I thought that was I love little things like that you don't think about actually
Well,
happening.
and Trump is one of the things that Trump said this week is that he's
Yeah,
he
he's
wants the
thinking,
Republican Party to
but
end that end daylight savings time.
he's very careful. If you read it, he says the Republican Party, something like he's going to do its best to get rid of daylight
Right,
time.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's going to do its best. So it's not a promise, folks. It's going to do its best, which means, yeah, don't hold your breath.
Well, don't hold me to it if it doesn't happen. Basically, is what he
Yeah,
said.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Which is smart. I mean, if you're a politician, you don't want to promise things and then walk away from them because that just corrodes your credibility.
Absolutely. You know, when people ask you what your favorite color is, you always say plaid.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, that just about brings us. And by the way, we're going to be back next week, so there will be another one before Christmas. So we're not going to say Merry Christmas yet, although we can say Merry Christmas if
Yeah,
we
we
want.
can say Merry Christmas. It's like, did you see it, the Jill Biden ceremony with
Yes.
the Christmas decorations? And she says, "So happy holidays, everybody," being so correct. And a little kid said, "Happy Christmas." But
And then they
Jill was
all chimed,
quick. Yeah,
they all
and
chimed in too.
yeah, I'll chime in, and she was smart enough to play along. Go, yes, Happy Christmas. Uh,
Oh my goodness. All
um,
right.
but
Jokes of
I worked for a Jewish institution for the New York Times for a long time, so I was well aware that you said Happy Holidays to everybody. There was a guy there uh, forever, and he had a Jewish name. This is a true story. He had a Jewish name, and so when the guy that sets a schedule came around all the time, he always gave him the Jewish holidays off. And so when he retired after 20 or 30 years, at his retirement dinner, he announced that he wasn't Jewish. So he got 30 years of extra holidays. And it was okay. They told me I'm off. I'm off. Okay, so I got a couple of jokes here. These are old. Seth Meyers says Nestle is recalling its Hot Pockets 4-cheese pizza snack bites due to mislabeling. They'll be re-released with the correct name, scalding hot yet somehow still frozen in the middle pockets.
that would be more.
Yeah, and then this one, I love this one. This is one of my favorite all-time jokes. Jimmy Fallon said, President Obama hosted a screening of the new movie Lincoln at the White House last night. After the movie, Joe Biden was like, "Whoa, I didn't see that ending coming." Isn't that rich? I love that one. Let's see. And then finally, Jay Leno says Facebook is introducing a next generation messaging system that incorporates email, IM, and texting all in one. It's designed to create a world where nothing gets done in the workplace ever again.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
All right, I got one for you, and this
Okay.
I get mine from jokesoftheday.net. I always like to give them credit. So 3 guys die and they go to the pearly gates, and St. Peter meets in there, and St. Peter says, "Look, I know you guys have been forgiven because you're here. Before I let you into heaven, though, I have to ask you something. You have to have a car in heaven because heaven is so big, but what kind of car you get depends on your answer." And the first guy walks up, and St. Peter says, "Well, how long were you married?" And the guy says, 24 years. And Peter says, did you ever cheat on your wife? He says, yes, 7 or 8 times, but you said I was forgiven. Peter says, yeah, but that's not too good. Here's the keys to your Pinto. So second guy walks up, and St. Peter asks him, same questions. And the second guy says, well, I was married for 41 years and cheated on her once, but that was our first year and it really worked out good. And Peter says, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Here's the keys to your new Lincoln. Oh, this is great. Thank you. Third guy walks up and says, St. Peter, I know what you're going to ask. I was married for 63 years. I never even looked at another woman. I treated my wife like a queen. And Peter says, that's what I like to hear. Here's the keys to your new Jaguar. So a few days later, the guy with the Lincoln, the guy with the Pinto are driving around, and they see the guy with the Jaguar sitting on the side of the road sobbing. And they pull over and they say, what's wrong? He says, I just saw my wife and she's on a skateboard.
Okay.
Hey.
Hey-o. Oh boy.
All right. Well, jokesoftheday.net. You can go check that out over there. There's probably better ones, but I like that one. I like me a good St. Peter joke. So there you go. Andrew Malcolm, the prince of Twitter, the regent of redstate.com, the manager of the mainstream media pearly gates.
The poobah pundits.
We'll talk again next week, right?
Yeah, we will. Okay. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everybody. See you then.
See you then.